Thank you very much. Please have a seat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, Madam Ryan, thank you for hosting us here yet again. It is the honor of Doug and mine to be with you, honoring the friendship and the importance of the relationship between India and the Prime Minister Modi. We are honored to welcome you. We also welcome the members of the President's Cabinet who are here and all of the members of Congress who are here, including Speaker Emerita Pelosi, Chairman McCall, and Ranking Member Meeks. And welcome to all of our distinguished guests. As I look around this room, I am struck by the extraordinary impact Indian Americans have had on our country in every facet of life. Take, for example, the historic number of members of the United States Congress with Indian heritage. Representatives Ami Bera, if you're here, please stand. Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, Raja Krishnamurthy, and Sridhar. And they're known as the Samosa Caucus, for those of you who did not know. And around our country, we see the impact of Indian Americans from the C-suites of American companies to neighborhood businesses, from the studios of Hollywood to university research labs across our country. So as many of you know, India is a very important part of my life. When my sister Maya and I were growing up, our mother would take us from the Bay Area to India pretty much every other year. And the purpose of those trips were many, including that we would well understand where she came from, what produced her, so that we could spend. India is a very important part of my life. When my sister Maya and I were growing up, our mother would take us from the Bay Area to India pretty much every other year. And the purpose of those trips were many, including that we would well understand where she came from, what produced her, so that we could spend time with our grandparents, with my uncle and our chitties, and to really understand the love of good idli. And we traveled to visit my grandparents in what was then called Madras. And I will tell you, my grandfather was one of the most favorite people in my life, truly. We were pen pals, in fact, throughout my childhood. And I was the eldest grandchild. And so, as I'm sure many of you know, culturally, to be the eldest has a certain significance. And so I took full advantage of that status in our family. And my grandfather, of course, convinced me, as he did, I think, every one of his grandchildren, that we were his favorite. Yet, on those visits, I was the only member of our family that my grandfather allowed to join him for his morning routine. You see, by the time that we were going there as children, my grandfather was retired from his career as a civil servant. And his morning routine, every morning, consisted of taking long walks on the beach with his retired buddies. And they, as retired civil servants, would debate the issues of the day. So I would hold my grandfather's hand on these walks and listen intently to him and his friends. And I will tell you, as a young girl, I don't think I fully appreciated the essence and the import of the debates that they would have. But I did clearly understand and do recall stories about the freedom fighters and the nation's founding heroes and about the independence of India. I remember them talking about the importance of fighting corruption and fighting for equality, regardless of one's belief or caste. Throughout these walks, I recall my grandfather teaching me lessons about not just what it means to have a democracy, but to keep a democracy. And I do believe it is these lessons that I learned at a very young age that first inspired my interest in public service. And I look back now, and I do fully realize how much these conversations influenced me and my thinking, and how they have guided me ever since. In fact, it is a large part of who I am today. These lessons I learned from my grandfather, P.V. Gopalan, and from the dedication, determination, and courage of his daughter, my mother, Shamala. And it is that being the reason that I stand before you today as Vice President of the United States. The history and teachings in India and of India have not only influenced me, they of course have shaped the entire globe, as Secretary Blinken just described. Throughout history, India has inspired millions of people around the world, whether through philosophy and theology, the power of civil disobedience, or the commitment to democracy. Indeed, as I travel the world as Vice President, I have seen India's global impact firsthand. In Southeast Asia, Indian-made vaccines have saved lives and livelihoods. On the continent of Africa, India's long-standing partnerships support prosperity and security. And throughout the Indo-Pacific, India helps promote a free and open region. I also know of India's extraordinary impact with regard to innovation, medicine, and science. I know this as a daughter of California. I know this as a former district attorney, attorney general, and senator who has worked on technology with leaders in Silicon Valley. And I know this, of course, as a daughter of a scientist. My mother, at the age of 19, arrived in the United States by herself as part of the first wave of Indian students to travel here. She chose UC Berkeley because it was known as being one of the best universities in the world. And growing up, I remember my mother, our mother, spending day and night and weekends in the lab. She always asked the big questions and searched for the answers that would be a clue to improving the condition of life. She understood what was possible, unburdened by what has been. And since then, I think about it in the context of the work she did and her studies that have led to advances in breast cancer research. And I think about it in the context of the millions of Indian students who have come to the United States since to collaborate with American researchers, to solve the challenges of our time, and to reach new frontiers. Indian innovators have made great strides in engineering and computer programming. They've sent a mission to Mars, and they have launched and led technology companies that are global leaders in the areas of autonomous vehicles, robotics, cybersecurity, climate data, and digital finance, all of which can serve to improve the human condition and uplift the people. The point here being, India's global engagement has not only been to the benefit of the people of India, but also to the benefit of the people of the United States and people around the world. So, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for your role of leadership to help India emerge as a global power in the 21st century. You have helped to reinvigorate the Quad. Your leadership of the G20 is making new strides on climate finance, and you have been a proponent of international institutions and global solutions to global challenges. And as a point of personal privilege, as chair of the National Space Council, I thank you for your leadership in space and for our joint work on an Earth science satellite, which will help us address the climate crisis. And I will also thank you because when you and I first met at the White House, I asked you to join the Artemis Accords, a commitment to the safe and transparent use of space And today I am happy to report, as you have, that you have joined the Artemis Accords. So, Prime Minister Modi, President Joe Biden and I are grateful for your commitment to strengthen the ties and the relationships between the United States and India. And we share that commitment. Under your leadership and that of President Biden, our partnership has become more expansive than it has ever been. Over the past 2.5 years, you and I have advanced cooperation on climate, on clean energy, terrorism, cybercrime, public health, and vaccine production. And during this trip, our countries have launched new areas of cooperation, from artificial intelligence to semiconductors. As we look toward the future, the United States and India, the world's oldest and largest democracies, instinctively turn to each other and are increasingly aligned. So I will close with this, which is a memory, again, of my grandfather and what he taught me on those long walks. And in particular, what he taught me about the nobility of public service. Prime Minister Modi, you and I have both dedicated our careers to the noble work of public service. And so to everyone here today, I say, it is incumbent on each of us, inside of government and outside of government, to continue the fight for progress and to serve the greater good. So I raise a glass to the enduring bonds between our nations and our people, and to our continued work together, all in the service of the greater good. Prime Minister. Cheers.